First Nation. First item on the agenda.
Recording in progress.
First item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. So I'll make the motion that the June 22nd, 2022 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented. Is there a seconder to that motion? Okay, seconded by Council Gesselbrack. Any discussion?
Yes, I have an amendment to the agenda.
And what's your amendment, please?
That we move item 10B, that is the item dealing with the meeting with the ministers at the UBCM, that we move that up the agenda until just after item 9C.
All right, just let me record that, 9C. And that's after 9C, Council Gesselbrack, or before?
That immediately after item 9C.
Okay, any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. All right, regarding the agenda and declaration of conflict, I will be declaring conflict on agenda items 9H to 9K, which involve the 6701 Harwood and 6717 Harwood. And provincial legislation requires me to give the reasons, which I will do now. The following is a provincial document giving 3 guidelines to non-pecuniary or non-money conflicts of interest. It states in broad terms, a locally elected official has a non-pecuniary conflict of interest if the following 3 qualifications are met. 1, the locally elected official's interest in the matter is immediate and distinct from the public interest. 2, it can be reasonably determined that the locally elected official's private interest in the matter will influence their vote on the matter. So if I think these 2 rezoning applications will negatively or positively affect my home in a way that's somewhat distinct from other residents, then I shouldn't vote on it. If there could be a perception that I might have a private interest which could influence my vote on the matter, then I shouldn't vote. The public has the right to have confidence in their elected representatives and expects them not to vote when there's a chance of perceived self-interest. And number 3, the locally elected official or one of their relations or associates stands to realize a personal benefit from a favorable decision on the matter. This is the clearest provincial guideline on an elected official voting on a matter which benefits a close associate or friend. The guideline is don't do it, don't vote on it. The public could perceive this as an elected representative doing a favor for a close associate or a friend benefiting. So hence, I'm declaring a conflict of interest for the sake of public trust, that there can be a perception I am voting out of self-interest. If I feel at all close to the line where conflict becomes a question, I choose to stay well back from that line. Is there any other councillor who wishes to declare conflict due to having a...
It's Director Coates here.
Yeah, Director Coates, please, you're out of order. If you could not just call out, please.
Well, I'm coming in remote and I'm just having problems showing my hand here. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, well, just a moment, Director Coates. Let's get this organized at the start of the meeting. If you have a point of order, that is directly involved, since we have a couple of bylaws tonight, that there's a faux pas being made procedurally. It's important that you please call out point of order. Other than that, there's no...
Point of order.
All right, and this is procedural, is it?
Yes, our procedure bylaw no longer requires declaring conflict at the beginning of the meeting. The conflict should be declared immediately before that agenda item, but I appreciate that you've announced this because then that will allow the next acting mayor to be ready for when we come up to that agenda item 9H to K. And just for clarity, at that time, when you go to make your declaration, you'll probably want to, rather than restate the whole explanation, is just indicate in summary whether your
Okay,
conflict
Director
is
Coates,
because you are a
Director Coates,
neighbor.
I'm speaking, please. I'm calling it order. That's enough, please. Okay, it's if the chair wishes to state it at the beginning for that very reason you cited, to give Councillor Wilson time to get prepared for it, that I won't be in the meeting, then that's at my prerogative, and it's not a serious point of order to be interrupted for. So please keep that in mind. Thank you. And as I was going to say, I was just asking if there is any other councillor who wishes to declare conflict, as I've read out the guidelines, having a close association with the applicant, or for any other reason, like having a private or distinct interest, they can do it now or before the motion comes up. And just to give a heads up, the procedure bylaws section 12.2 states, if both the mayor and the acting mayor are absent, the upcoming acting mayor steps in, which will be Councillor Wilson, who will take over chairing the meeting for agenda items 9H to 9K. So I'm calling the question on adoption of the agenda, which I believe I've done. Thank you. So next on the agenda is item 7, the consent agenda.
Sorry for the minute taker. I believe you had a mover and a seconder for the agenda.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. Yeah.
And then there was a motion to amend it. You got it carried unanimously on the amendment. So now the question is on the agenda as amended.
We're on the main motion. Thank you. And once again, if you just call point of order, please. Thank you. So I'm calling the question or adoption of the agenda. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried unanimously. Next on the agenda is item 7, the consent agenda. I'll make the motion that the recommendation listed for items 7A and 7B on the consent agenda be approved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Gasperbeck seconded. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, carried unanimously. Next is agenda item 8, public input. Public input period. Persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record, may speak once for up to 2 minutes, unless council resolves otherwise, and are limited to providing a comment regarding items on the council agenda for the meeting, excluding public hearing topics. Comments must be directed to the chair, are put to be directed to individual council members, staff, or the audience, and must not include personnel issues. Director Coates, is there anyone on public input, please?
Deputy Director?
No, there is not.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is legislative matters, bylaws, development, various permits.
Sorry, point of order?
Yep.
You still need to call, we've responded on the electronic. You still need to call in the audience if there's anybody who wishes to comment.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience which wishes to speak? Public input? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to the next on the agenda is legislative matters, bylaws, development, variance, permits, agreements, contracts, grants, budgets. Item 9A, I'll make the motion that the annual report be accepted. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Wilson. Any discussion? Councillor Gesselbrack.
Thank you. Through to staff, I'm looking at page 11 of the report, page 30 of the agenda, and it states that there, in 2021, there was an increase in the accumulated surplus of 6.1, largely attributable to developer contributed assets. Through the chair to staff, could you clarify what those projects or what those contributions were?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Gesselbrack. So when we're referring to the contributed developer contributed assets, that would be the water reservoir, the Harwood water reservoir, roads, water infrastructure, and sewer infrastructure in the foothills, and in the Harwood subdivision as well. And in addition to that, contributions to reserves would form part of the surplus because they're not recognized as an expenditure in your financial statements according to PSAB. They form part of the surplus, and any grant funding that went towards capital projects that was recognized during the year would form part of that 6.1 million. So the lion's share is the reservoir and the roads and sewer and water infrastructure in the new developments.
Thank you. Supplemental, if I may. Page 94 of the report indicates that there was 22 million in new assets and construction, and that appears to be the same for 2021, 2020. Is that, in fact, all due to new construction in Lantzville?
That would be correct. That would be the market value of new construction in the District of Lantzville.
Thank you. I just want to say I found the report very well done. Lots of interesting information in there. And I would recommend that any resident would look through that and get a good glimpse of how the district is operating and what sort of monies are being taken in and by way of taxes and expenditures. So thank you very much, Director Hare.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Councillor Gesselbrack, I can't see you, please. Okay, all those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Next is agenda item 9B, 2021 Statement of Financial Information. I'll make the motion that the 2021 Statement of Financial Information be approved. Is there a seconder? Okay, Councillor Proctor seconded. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. All right, that takes us on to our next item, which is 9C, Lantzville Road, Water Main Upgrade, Peterson Road to Huddlestone Road Project Tender Award. I'll make the motion that council awards the contract for the Lantzville Road water main upgrade, Peterson Road to Huddleston Road project, to Copcan Civil Limited in the amount of $635,860 plus GST. Is there a seconder for that? It's Councillor Wilson. Any discussion? First to the seconder, Councillor Wilson. Any discussion from other councillors? Okay, I have one item here, and through to staff, please. Is there an opportunity to run a water line to some surface boxes for future irrigation possibilities? There'll be a Lantzville Road walkway upgrades at some point in the future with the potential of some greenery and rest areas, which may need some irrigation. It just makes sense to have some outlets for potential irrigation in the future. Is that a possibility to include in these upgrades?
Mr. Chairman, Director Spears was unable to attend, but I'll pass that question on to him and he'll provide a response to council.
All right, yeah, that's great. If you could pass that on, that if it's a little extra cost, but could be done out of reserve or gas tax or some such thing, it wouldn't be much, just thinking ahead for the future while the road's dug up to perhaps provide just a box or two that could be hooked up to irrigation pipes and so on in the future. Thank you. So I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion's carried unanimously. Next item is the Foothills application with item 9D on the agenda. And I'll make that motion.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Gesselbrandt.
The amended agenda has us looking at item 10B now.
Thank you for the reminder. We'll go straight to 10D. Okay, this is a motion with respect to UBCM convention, meeting requests with provincial cabinet ministers and the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Is that the correct motion, Councillor Gesselbrandt, you requested?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So that appointments be requested for meetings in the 2022 UBCM convention with provincial cabinet ministers and the Minister of Municipal Affairs, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, to discuss the following topics. Minister of Municipal Affairs resubmitted WINS residential area water supply through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Environmental Quality. Minister of Municipal Affairs, $6 million fire hall grant application under the Strategic Priorities Fund Capital Infrastructure stream. So do we have a seconder for that? Okay, Councillor Proctor. Any discussion first to the seconder? Any other councillors' discussion? Any other topics to insert? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, carried unanimously. That takes us back to item 9D. That's bylaw number 279. I'll read the first motion that District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150, 2019, Amendment Foothill Special Plan Area, Bylaw number 279, 2021 be given first reading. And because it's first reading, first we'll have a seconder, please. All right, Councillor Wilson seconds. And because this is first reading, there'll be no discussion on it. So all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And the second motion of 9D, that District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150, 2019, Amendment Foothill Special Plan Area, Bylaw number 279, 2021, be given second reading. Is there a seconder? That's Councillor Proctor. Any discussion? First to the seconder. Okay, so what I'm suggesting doing here is, now that we're at second reading, is regarding discussion and questions, I'd like to suggest for each motion, except the first readings, we first ask questions, get whatever information each of us would like, and I'm proposing to rotate councillors with 3 questions at a time for each term, and then after questions we can get on with our discussion, debate, or any proposed amendments. So beginning with this, is there any introduction from staff would like to do on this? Thank you. Director Limshu.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Council, there we go. We're going to share screens. Can everybody see the screen in front with the 2 plans?
Yes, I can see it. Could you speak a little into the microphone, please? So
Thank
we can
you.
hear you. Thanks.
Yeah. The purpose of the application is to consider an OCP and a zoning bylaw amendment to amend the existing Foothills Comprehensive Development Area Plan and the Foothills Comprehensive Development Area Zone. The proposed amendment bylaws will replace the current OCP and zoning bylaws for the subject properties. If adopted, the bylaws will allow for an overall increase in the maximum permitted residential units from 730 units to 814 units. So just to provide a bit of a recap, the subject lands were zoned in 2007. The project's commonly referred to as the Foothills Project. It was a master plan community development. And as many of us are aware, the project is currently been initiated and is currently under development. In 2014, the district entered into an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with the property owner to basically replace the existing development agreement and to put in place some generally accepted principles with respect to the overall development of the project. The idea was to replace the existing development agreement with a new phase development agreement. So this has been in the works for 8+ years since the execution of the MOU. Since that time, currently there are approximately 102 lots that have been registered, untitled. There are single-family lots and houses that are currently being constructed on each of those parcels. Also, approximately 720 acres of parkland has been dedicated to the district since that time. The property itself encompasses approximately 732 hectares, or just over 1,800 acres in its totality. As I indicated before, this is a master plan community which allows for a variety of housing types, single family, multifamily, and also accommodates a proposed commercial village at the top. The proposed amendment would increase the overall permitted residential units from 730 to 814. So that's an increase of approximately 84 units, give or take. And that's, there's no distinction between units, so it's 84 units in total over what's currently permitted. It also accommodate up to 5,000 square meters of non-residential use. The plan also refines the village concept further. It identifies 3 distinct neighborhoods for the project. Within the document, those neighborhoods are identified as the Village, the Quarry Service Center, and the Hecalla Creek Neighborhood Center. Within each of those neighborhoods, there's a mix of housing types, as well as non-residential uses permitted in those areas. So the plans that you see before you on the left indicates the existing zoning as it currently exists. And one of the distinct features of this existing zone
Point of privilege.
Yes, Councillor Wilson?
I can't hear Councillor, or sorry, Director Limshu.
Okay, I'll ask him to speak directly real close to the mic and see, and let us know, please, if that's an improvement when he speaks, Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
sorry about that. Just had some technical difficulties. Can everybody see this red laser pointer on the screen? So if you refer to the plan to the left, you'll see that there are blobs sort of in the lower center of the project. And those blobs basically indicate future residential development. One of the big change with the proposed amendment bylaws is that those residential units will be shifted towards the east side of the property. So if you refer to the plan to the right, you'll see that the end result would mean that the park area, this gray area, is made whole, and you wouldn't see residential development within the center of what will eventually be parklands. Those units, as I indicated, are going to be shifted further to the east, closer to the services that have currently been developed and will ultimately be extended to facilitate build out of the project. Effectively, what's happened is that the density is being transferred so that the development as a whole becomes more compact, thus reducing costs of extending services and ultimately reducing the cost to the municipality with respect to maintaining those services, in particular roads. The last thing I want to just touch on is with respect to the MOU outlined some basic parameters with respect to what would be included in the phase development agreement in terms of principles and amenity contributions. And those amenity contributions will be refined through the phase development agreement. That phase development agreement document will lock down the amenities that are to provide as part of this application, as well as the timing for which those amenities will be provided. It's anticipated that the phase development agreement will be brought forward in the near future at a future council meeting. The staff report outlines the fundamental requirements with respect to amenities, includes the dedication of 183 acres of parkland, 51 acres dedicated to the district for its use, an amenity contribution of $9,100 per unit. The construction or the expansion of the existing or of a pump station for the existing reservoir. The development itself will include a series of pathways throughout the project. It'll also include offsite improvements along along the Phillips Alt Road intersection. Last but not least, it'll include the construction of a roundabout. And that roundabout, it was articulated in the original agreement, and despite the fact that the recent traffic study indicates a roundabout is not needed, developers is agreed to continue with the construction of the roundabout. The development also include development of what we refer to as a park strategy. And that park strategy will further indicate and outline the programming around neighborhood parks, trail linkages, and the amenities for those parks. And that may include parking areas, washroom facilities, children play areas, drinking fountains, those sorts of things. The last point I want to make is just draw council's attention to the fact that there was an amendment made to the document to effectively include or identify the upper lookout on page 168 of the council agenda. So while the document itself did identify the potential for securing the lookout area as a neighborhood park, it wasn't clearly identified on the map. And we thought for clarity's sake, we'd identify it on the map so that there was no misunderstanding as to the location of that particular point. So with that, I'll open it up to questions from council. I should also mention that Edward Porter, the lead planner for the project, is online to answer questions as well.
Sorry, Director Limich, could you repeat that, please?
I just wanted to point out that Edward Porter, he's the representative for the developer. He is also online to answer questions. Should council have any questions for the applicant?
Edward Porter. Okay, great. I was hoping that would be the case. Thank you. All right, for questions, I see you had your hand up, Councillor Gesselbrack. Did you have a question or questions?
Not at this point. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that has questions, please? Okay, I've got some here, and as I said at the preamble that I'll limit it to 3 questions for each councillor, then it'll be the next round after that. So through to Mr. Porter, please. The parkland is very generous and community-minded parkland boundaries. So a sincere thank you to the Foothills for that. I've been following this for a number of years, and I'm really, just my own personal opinion, I'm very pleased at the result. It's just terrific parkland boundaries. And just a couple of small details, please. With the park, the current covenant map shows a parkland buffer between the Phantom Road area and the development area. This is now gone. Regardless, will there still be a planned green corridor buffering the Phantom Road area and the ALR lands of Pleasant Valley? And could these be neighborhood parkland buffers? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I guess I would like to just clarify this. The area that you're speaking of is on the eastern edge of the plan boundary, really more towards the Vi Pond Road area where we have adjacency with the ALR. Is that correct?
Well, it's as you go up the main road, that new road extension you just built, it's just down there on the left. There was a former green corridor, but because the road was widened, it's quite a lot of rock that's spilled out on an angle now, and it seems that parkland's been eliminated from the final one. So I was just speaking on behalf of a Phantom Road resident that was wondering if there'll be some green buffer returned to that land. And I'll just wait for Mr. Potter and then you, Director Limshu. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Potter.
Sorry, so I believe that the Phantom Road area is actually outside of the current plan boundary. And so the special area plan actually doesn't consider those lands, but I would pass that back to Director Limshu.
Yeah, okay, Director Limshu.
Yes, just to clarify, I believe the buffer that you're speaking of, yes, in the original covenant, there is a sliver of a green buffer bordering, I'll call it the Phantom Road properties that back onto the Foothills properties. And it's my understanding that that buffer will still be maintained with this revision. So there won't be properties, if you will, directly backing onto Phantom Road.
Okay, and then the ALR land, that's a future phase, but would the same principle be there? Would you
The same principle would apply.
Yeah, okay. And just as an adjunct to that, that rock slope I'm referring to, I know that a resident on Phantom had requested that it be covered in some overburden just so it can green up eventually. Do you know where that stands, you or Mr. Potter?
I can't speak to that specifically at this point in time. Certainly, I'll follow up with the applicant to discuss it and get a timing, and certainly we'll reach out to the neighbor that's made the inquiry.
Okay, thank you. And the next one regarding the parklands, at the Foothills Open House, Mr. Okenen said there would be a park corridor all along the front northwest ridge, but it was too slim to show on the maps, and that the houses would not dominate the top of the ridge and loom over the areas below what would be set back. I just wanted to confirm that again, that that's the case, Mr. Porter, sorry.
Thank you for that question. And I believe, and this is something that I would go back again and say some of this, I believe, may have been already established prior to this planning exercise. From the, when I look at the current study area and what we've looked at in those ridgelands into the future, the area of what we've designated as the uplands residential area does extend to the subject area of the existing property line. But I would also, just in looking at the physical terrain, the slope itself continues to run out before it falls down. So I'd like to look at this issue with you more specifically, because I'm not specifically aware of this buffer that you're describing.
Yeah, it's a trail system. Yes, Director Limshu, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to point out that the applicant's also in the audience, and I believe they do have an answer to your question.
Yes, please. Sorry, if you could just speak into the mic there, thanks.
Yes, thank you. There's an existing 3-meter wide parkland dedication that has been dedicated that would govern the edge of that ridge. And so the existing lands that are being asked for rezoning do not impact that 3-meter ridge.
Okay, great. And just to follow up then with the houses, they'll be set back somewhat from that so they don't somewhat loom over the...
So first of all, there's a setback from park. So that'll govern where the houses can be built. And the parkland itself will determine the treescape, which is in existence today.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. It's a lovely trail along there, so excellent. Thank you very much. And my third question, please, this would be to Director Limshu. I'm just wondering why the Foothills is now called a special plan area. In the OCP, 11.14 states The district has designated the foothills estates land as a comprehensive development plan area. It's always been called a comprehensive development plan area, not a special area plan. Is there a reason for that, please?
The reason for that is simple. It's just consistency in language throughout the OCP. So rather than having one area referred to as a comprehensive plan area versus a special plan area, in reviewing the document, it seemed that we are the language that we've been using and referring to for these types of projects has been special planned area. At the end of the day, they mean the same thing. But like I say, I think from staff's perspective, we just wanted some consistency in the language rather than confusing the issue.
Okay, and that permeates all the documents there now, so it'll be very difficult to reverse that, right? Thank you. All right, those are my 3 questions for this round. Is there anyone else, please, that has questions for Mr. Porter? Okay, seeing none, I'll go on to my next ones, please. And a long-time resident pointed out to me the page 164 map shows Metro Creek, but it is actually Rains Creek, he said. So it's just, he feels it's been misnamed. So what's named Metro Creek should be named Rains Creek, which bears salmon and trout further down, and also what is called in this map Kettle Creek, he says is actually Metro Creek, which is trout bearing. And this resident has water rights to both these creeks, and there may be others who have water rights too, so the correct names could be very important. So I don't expect you to answer this now, but could you perhaps look into that just as a housekeeping matter so there's no confusion or it becomes the wrong name over time. And number 4, again, this is just a question to consider. It's not there now. But in the northwest section, this is the section right up where we were talking about, where it's got lovely views and it's right over top of the woodlot. There is a park which leads down to the woodlot below, a foothill section there. But to just that western border, before it gets to the main park, there's no corridor there. So I was just wondering whether it's private or public. Just if you'd consider a small wildlife corridor there so they can go all the way from the main park through that corridor down to the woodlot. Then the woodlot contains Narston Creek, and there's a corridor that goes all the way down to the ocean from there. So just to keep that corridor unbroken. And any comments, Mr. Porter, on that? We don't have to decide now, but.
Sorry, I realize my mic is on. I would actually defer to Allard on that parcel and ask for clarification in terms of ownership of that parcel. It's a gap out of the plan area as I see it in our mapping. And so, and I know it also sits adjacent to the existing reservoir site, and it may be related to that.
Yes, it's just simply on the far west. It borders the Timberlands forest property, and it would just be a buffer separating the forest property, which was just clear cut, and the residential properties. It's on that edge there. So just something to consider while we have this opportunity. Director Limshu?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I believe we can certainly work with the applicant in that area to provide that buffer that you're looking at.
Great, thank you. And the last one for this round, please, is the Hecalla Creek Park Corridor is now adjacent to the Hecalla Neighborhood Center. And this was brought up by other residents I've talked to. And this section of the creek is simply beautiful, including 20 to 30 feet rock bluffs. So again, a thank you for including it in the park. And it is probably too early to determine the exact boundaries of the park corridor on either side of Hecalla Creek, but may I suggest you look very carefully at integrating the park corridor right into that village setting. So some of the trails getting around the village go through forested park areas or are open sunny park plazas and so on, which somewhat bring the creek right into the park. It's something Whistler did to great effect. So did you have your hand up, Mr. Allen? Or sorry, Mr. Okinen? Oh,
No,
sorry, okay.
Just a thumbs up. Great idea.
Yep. Okay, that's terrific. And last one for this round, related to villages, can you please explain what the Gateway Village is all about, what its purpose is? It seems clear, the Hecalla Neighborhood Center, but I'm just not quite clear what the Gateway Village will do.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. The Gateway Village really is, as you can see, just in terms of the logical sequence of development, it's really our first opportunity to introduce a mix of uses within otherwise residential uses at the foothills. So if you can use your imagination and kind of think of the Copley Summit and the Lone Tree Summit sitting sort of side by side, the Gateway Village really sits nestled between those two high points. And as a result, it's a small space. I mean, it's a fairly intimate scale of a place. If you're familiar with Artisan Square on Bowen Island as a small collection of buildings around a very small kind of pedestrian center there, that was really the size and kind of character of village that we modeled the idea of the Gateway Village upon. So really the idea there is to bring in a mix of, more compact housing, such as townhouse forms, ground-oriented compact housing forms like townhouses, and then a collection of neighborhood serving commercial, really things like, the opportunity for a cafe, or another idea that we imagined was even a bike shop combined with a cafe to serve as a bit of a trailhead and kind of staging area up into the park, but also as a real sort of social gathering place for residents. So that's really the idea of that Gateway Village. It's that first opportunity to create a little bit more of a mixed use social gathering space for residents nestled between these two landmark peaks, and actually with views as distant to the water from that site. In fact, when you're there, you're at an elevation where development there and a few clearing of trees and view clearings would benefit you to have distant water views.
Great, thank you. So it could be something very inspiring. Sounds great. So that's it for my three pleas. So on to other councilors, staff, or any members of the Foothills who'd like to speak or ask a question, please. Okay, no one, so I'll go on to my next. I just have a few more. The rock picking is a method being used by some builders to remove such things as grassland rock mesas for the building site. And I've just heard from some residents within earshot, it's a little bit of an irritant. So I know in your application there are references to environmentally sensitive building. So is this something which could perhaps be addressed just in the rocky hilltop rock mesa areas, trying to perhaps design homes around the existing beauty rather than over excavating the site? I saw one that went down about 12, 16 feet from the top of the original mesa. So is that something you could address, Mr. Porter?
Yes, sir. I think in terms of the design guidelines that we layered into the special plan, the document, the policy document itself, it does speak to, working with land. And I know that that's a big part of what we would like to see through the execution and implementation of the plan itself. I think some of the major challenges that we have here around the terrain itself, and then requirements relative to road building and maximum grades are one thing that we have to consider around civil works and engineering standards and maximum road grades and what that will likely do. But when it comes to some of those architectural choices and site development, that's certainly something that we've indicated in the plan as a guideline for managing future development.
Right. I don't think they've invented mufflers yet for these rock pickers. So anyway, that's good. Just thought I'd mention that. Thank you. And this is an important one. This is wildfire prevention. We had a report done, and a lot of it focused on the foothills by a consultant in North Vancouver. And he had a lot of good recommendations. I thought it was a little onerous, some of the recommendations for building standards, because when you're recommending building materials that just aren't available in current building stores, it's just tough. But he did say that 80% of the problem can be solved in neighborhoods by having fire-smart roofs, fire-resistant roofs. And that's something you've included in your literature, which is excellent. But it's just something that I really would hate to see happen. I think we learned from Lytton just how fast it can happen and the devastation of it. So have you given thought, it's maybe something we could work on over the next few years while we're doing this, to see if we can't incorporate some non-onerous things, like, for example, deciduous trees, some more than others, can be a fire break. So any thoughts on that, Mr. Porter?
I think to your point, the plan calls for applying fire smart principles as a first step. We certainly see that as one major opportunity, as you referenced. I think another to speak to is the consolidation of the park area, insofar as we're trying to have areas where you have residential uses in areas of residential land use and areas of park being more contiguous and therefore perhaps better managed, so that you're not having sort of enclaves of residential uses inside of park, which might introduce some conflict over time, both from an ecological perspective, but also from a fire risk perspective. So, a more consolidated footprint allows for better emergency response and better management in that sense, and gives you, I guess, clarity around some of your boundaries in those wildfire interfaces, and allows you to manage that more effectively, more efficiently. So those are really the two places we've sort of layered that in terms of a strategy within the plan.
Okay, well, that's great. Just something to think on as we're moving forward with this, for sure. And page 183, I thought I'd point out, in site planning, it states prioritizing accessibility within public gathering places. Are you referring to handicapped accessible, like wheelchairs, walkers, that sort of thing?
That's exactly right. Recognizing foothills landscape is very complex, and there's a lot of terrain to navigate. We want to make sure that where we do program gathering places, that we make sure that those places are where everyone can gather.
I think that's just excellent. It's not always you see that done proactively, and it's very thoughtful to do that. So that's kudos for that. And sorry, Director Limsher, you had your hand up earlier. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out that the process for amending the bylaws, the zoning and the OCP amendment, that's one process that the applicants have to go through. Assuming that the bylaws are approved, when you do get to the stage where they're actually developing the sites, they'll be subject to development permit areas. And one of those development permit areas is the wildfire interface. And so as part of the subdivision approval process, they will have to apply for development permits, and they will be required to provide additional information supporting and speaking to how they're going to deal with the wildfire interface concerns on the site.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. And just before my last two questions, are there any councillors that have questions? Okay, I'll finish.
Point of order. Director Coates has had her hand up for a long time, and I'm wondering what she had to say.
Just speaking to that, we have an arrangement at the beginning of the meeting that anytime she wants to enter with procedural matters, she just says point of order. So thank you.
So on this occasion, it's not a point of order, but I did not want your questions or suggestions about the creeks and the naming of the creeks to be lost. So the motion that's on the floor is for giving a bylaw second reading. I guess my question is whether, oh, sorry, can you hear me? My mic was up. Yeah, was whether the intent was to do a motion after this motion is voted on, or whether your intent was to do an amendment if you feel that the names of the creeks within the bylaw are incorrect. Also, I should note at this point, there's been several occasions reference to the public, and particularly for this one, because it's discussing a water license, it's very important that the public is referred to put their concerns in writing to the district so that we have a record of that and that is not lost. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. No, I have no amendments planned. Quite frankly, I've found this developer group has been so cooperative with the community that any suggestions, they seem very open, and that's what I look forward to over the years, is working cooperatively. So just my last two questions, observations, please, which I'm hoping I'm bringing out some of the great aspects and other aspects of this development, is page 168, architectural design. Oh, sorry, page 183, architectural design. It states oversized eaves. And this is a real rarity that I ever see this. And may I suggest you do a lot of this. The eaves, for example, surrounding my house are 16 feet deep. And extending roof eaves at the time of building is relatively inexpensive, but it really gives a lot of outdoor dry space in the rainy winter and provides welcome shade in summer heat. So if living not far from the foothills, you get a little more snow and so on. Up there, the snow line can be just a little bit higher at times. So it's an opportunity if people using the village, they can walk around if it's covered. What a difference. So it's really, and also in the summer heat getting around. So again, I wanted to point that out, that's very rare. I see that, and a very, very good thing, the oversized eaves. And number 10, last question. There were some lovely watercolor drawings at your public open house. So if I could ask you to consider if it's possible to save these for public display in either private commercial businesses like the pub or in future public buildings. They would just add a lot of character to the village flavors there. Thank you. Any last comments from the developer group? Any questions from councillors or Director Limshu? Okay, next we'll get on with discussion. So first over to the seconder, Councillor Proctor, if you have any discussion, please.
What point of clarification?
Yes.
Have we introduced the second item, second reading? Has that been?
Yes, that's the one we're discussing now.
Has it been moved and seconded?
Yes, it was seconded by Councillor Proctor, moved by myself. Thank you. Okay. So any discussion from any other councillors? Okay, well, I will. I'm certainly not going to speak for residents. It'll be up to them to give their input, but there are very, very many positives about this development. The obvious first one is the parkland. And again, I think the development group should be very proud of themselves, and staff as well worked very hard on this for several years, making sure they got the parkland boundaries correct. And I'd also like to thank 3 members of the original OCP committee way back in 2006-ish, 2005 that helped negotiate and came up with the original parkland boundaries. That's Brian Blood, John Hollywell, and Terry Murphy. So that's the first thing. The second is I see this as a real opportunity, a blank canvas to create beautiful village settings with more higher-end homes that have proved to be a really economic benefit to Lantzville to date, and to hopefully encourage this approach of being innovative, unique, and a special place to continue. But basically, it has my full support for passing second reading and moving on to the public hearing. And as always, it's important to listen to what the public has to say. So we shall find out over the next time what that is. But I have heard over the, as this has evolved over the years, some very positive comments. So I'll leave it at that. Is there anyone else which wishes to comment, please? Okay, I'll call the question on the second reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. And now on to the next item of the agenda, which is the third motion of 9D. And it reads that District of Lantzville Official Community Plan, bylaw number 150, 2019, Amendment Foothill Special Area Plan. Bylaw number 279, 2021 is consistent with the District of Lantzville Financial Plan and the relevant waste management plans. Do I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Wilson, any discussion first to the seconder? Okay, any other councillors? Discussion? Okay, I'll just follow up briefly on what I said, and that is for the past couple of budgets, the Foothills Phase 1 has been a pleasant surprise. I believe it was up in the neighborhood of 135 range, $1,000 more that came into our budget from the tax assessed values being high and the taxes collected from those, plus utilities. There were some taxes there from the foothills. So I just want to say that it more than exceeds what our financial plan is. So it's great on that aspect as well. So financially, I would call it a winner at this point to date. So thank you. So any other discussion on this motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Now we're on to the next item on 9E, the first motion, which is that District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180-2020, amendment Foothills Comprehensive Development Zone, bylaw number 280-2021 be given first reading. Do I have a seconder? No seconder? Councillor Wilson, thank you. Seconded, and there's no discussion on this, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. The next motion under 9E, the second one, I'll make that District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180-2020, amendment Foothills Comprehensive Development Zone, bylaw number 280-2021 be given second reading. Is there a seconder? Councillor Proctor. And any discussion, questions on this one? We can intersperse questions with discussion on this one. So any councillors wish to discuss? First to the seconder. Any other councillors? Okay. For myself, this is, I think, pretty well covered in the last comments. So I will go straight to the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. And next item, which is motion 3 on 9E, that a public hearing for official community plan amendment bylaw number 279 and zoning amendment bylaw 280, number 280, be scheduled. Do I have a seconder? Okay. Councillor Wilson seconded. Any discussion? Okay, my input on this would be that I'm hoping on such a major development, certainly it's the biggest in Lantzville to date, people would have an opportunity to come out at a good time of the year. And as I say, I've really heard mostly support for it, so we will find out at the public hearing, but I would encourage not having a summer public hearing in this. We're already at June 22nd, so that would put it mid-July to have one as quickly as possible, and it's just not a good time. We've already got one in July. There's only so many times you can bring people out, and there's also, if I may ask, please, through to Director Limshaw, is there plan for another public information meeting?
I do not believe there are plans for any additional public information meetings at this time.
Yeah, okay. All right, I know of some people who didn't get to attend the last one. I found it thoroughly enjoyable myself, lots of great information, well presented. So I would just encourage that I think a a lot of people would like to as well come out and support at a public hearing, perhaps have some fine tuning or some points. But this is one that I think it would be great to have the community to be able to come out with as many as possible, and that would be sometime in September would be the best time for that, and not right in the heart of the summer. So I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you. If there's no more discussion, I will call the question on the public hearing. Does anyone need the motion reread? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, it's carried unanimously. So next on our agenda is bylaw number 313. Would someone like to make this motion, please? Okay, I'll make the motion that District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150, 2019. And thank you to the Foothills gentlemen for appearing tonight. Appreciate it. I'll read that again. That District of Lantzville Official Community Plan, Bylaw number 150, 2019, Amendment 6671 and 6685/6685B, Harwood Drive, Bylaw number 313, 2022, be given first reading. Do I have a seconder? Okay, there will be no discussion on this, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? Mayor, or Acting Mayor Savage opposed. So it carries with Acting Mayor Savage opposed. And next motion, which is 9F, second motion that District of Lantzville Official Community Plan, Bylaw number 150, 2019, Amendment 6671 and 6685/6685B, Harwood Drive, Bylaw number 313, 2022, be given second reading. Is there a seconder? Okay. Any discussion from council? That's seconded by Councilor Proctor. Any discussion from council? Okay, I have some comments on this, and while this is the official community plan bylaw, it's somewhat mixed up with the zoning as well. So I'm certainly not in favor of this at all. There's an enormous problem with this application. It's currently zoned estate residential, and I'll just put my timer on one moment, please. So it is currently zoned estate residential with both our OCP and zoning restrict to 1 acre minimum lots, but it's applying for 1/2 and 1/3 acre lots plus a new R7 zone, which allows high density patio homes. In this application, it works out to 7.5 units per acre. The proposal is recommended by staff management, which now means all, and I mean all properties which have sewer and community water can now apply for any rezoning they want, including this higher density R7, because the district is now setting the precedent, and what is fair to one should be fair to all. So are we now ripping up the 2019 OCP? Are we now ripping up the freshly minted 2020 zoning bylaw? In June 2017, at an OCP committee open house in a formal questionnaire on the board there were asked, do you want to change the policies of a state residential or leave them as they are? The majority resident input was leave them as they are at 1 acre minimum lot size. As a result, that became the OCP policy. During the new zoning bylaw process, the former planner downzoned estate residential lands to minimum 2.5 acre lot sizes, but I continually protested until the OCP 1 acre minimum was restored, which it was in the zoning bylaw. It was back to 1 acre minimum. Previous to this Harwood property was zoned rural 1D, which allowed a minimum 5 acre lot size. So the 1 acre minimum lot size for state residential was not arbitrary. It was directly focused upon in both the 2019 OCP process and the 2020 zoning process. So if we are now ripping up the OCP, that's not what residents want. I can assure you, not what I want. And it will seriously affect semi-rural Lantzville. The R7 zone allows a total floor area of 40% of the land. That's 1,724 square feet of floor space per acre. The parcel area coverage is 35%, which is 15,246 square feet per acre. So you could have 15,000 square foot small homes, patio homes, duplexes per acre, subject to conditions, obviously, but it's a very high density. Previous to the 2020 new zoning bylaw, so in 2 years, this property went from 5 acre lots to 1 acre lots, and now to 7.5 units per acre, all in just 2 years. And are all other property owners now entitled to this uplift in zoning? Whatever happened to the Village South argument repeated by Councillor Wilson, that high-density Village South will take the pressure off the rest of Lantzville and keep it semi-rural. Now we know that's provably not true if this proceeds. There's zero parkland in the proposal, which is contrary to the OCP's requirement of more than 5% parkland. We get cash in lieu, but the staff report states the cash is estimated to be $150,000 to $200,000 in lieu of a 0.56 acre park. Since when can you buy a half acre of land for $150,000 to $200,000? 7530 Olds Road, just 1 block away, has a tax-assessed land value of $566,000, and it's just a shade above a half acre. Just like this parkland we're giving up would have been, and that's just 5%, and we're supposed to be getting more than 5%. So we're only getting 35% of the land's true value. So that's my speaking time. I'll leave that for this round. Are there any other speakers, please? All right, for my second round, I will...
I have my hand raised.
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Gesselbach.
Thank you, Chair. I disagree anybody's ripping up anything, especially an OCP or a zoning bylaw. This is the procedure that's set out in the OCP if an application comes in and is seeking to a different designation, such as the R7 zoning. Council, first of all, must vote whether it should go to the public. It will go to the public if this is passed second reading. There'll be public information hearings. There will be a public hearing, and then it will come back to council. I'm not going to comment on what personally I think is good or bad in this. I think that's up for the public to hear, first of all. I think there's some novel elements to this. The R7 zoning is a building strata, and the rest of the project is a bare land strata. The result of that would be that the owners would be responsible for all road maintenance, utilities, garbage, snow removal. So that would be a burden taken off of the district. I've read the report from staff. Staff's recommending this. Staff has set out why. It's consistent with the OCP, mentioned various things like seniors housing. This is once again diversity of housing. We've heard many residents say, gee, I wish I could downsize. This will be an option. So without belaboring that, I would be in favor of moving ahead to second reading and to passing that and letting the public have their right to hear about this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please? Yes, Councillor Proctor.
I think that this proposal has merits, and I would like to see it go to a public hearing so that I can hear what the public has to say about it. The owner of the property has certainly entered the appropriate process to ask to have this land rezoned, and I think it is worthwhile us looking at it.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please? First round. Okay, seeing none, I will speak for my second round, and I have some questions for Director Limshu, please. So, as I was saying, we're only getting pennies on the dollar for the cash in lieu, and with all due respect to Councillor Gesselbrecht, there's nowhere in the OCP that calls for a process for rezoning estate residential lands to a brand new R7, an R1, or an R2. That's the special area plans that lists that process. So now the foothills, second reading just passed, which authorizes some small compact housing in the villages. So does Clark Met and Village South. So we don't need more of it in arbitrary residential areas, especially ones zoned for minimum 1 acre parcels. This was the whole point of the OCP, was assigning the density in certain areas and not in others. It was planned a year-and-a-half process or longer. $126,000 was lots of public input, and this estate residential zone was specifically brought up. So there's nothing in the OCP that calls for this. So now through to Director Limshu, please. Question regards timing, Director Limshu. The former planner said it would take about 1 year for an OCP amendment. Motion to amend our OCP passed on May 18th, 2021. To protect heron nests. That was well over a year ago, and it still has not been done. Small Lot A Dickinson Road rezoning took 3 months, Small Harvey Road rezoning took 6 months, and Small 6935 Dickinson rezoning took over 8 months, and none of them had OCP amendments. So is there a possibility, Director Limshu, this OCP amendment can receive final approval before the October 15th election, a mere 3.5 months from now, which also includes the August break?
I don't think I can answer that question, specifically. As you know, the process of rezoning requires, a number of steps. The applicant has to put forward the application, and just as a point of clarification, a property owner does have the right to apply for an amendment to the bylaws, whether there's an OCP amendment or a zoning bylaw amendment. That, as a property owner, that's their right. Council then determines whether or not, at the end of the day, that's appropriate, whether or not the change or the amendment is appropriate. As far as the timing of the process, it really depends on a number of factors. The completeness of the application, whether or not there's community support for it, just in terms of timing of processing, scheduling public hearings. You allude to the election in October, and certainly there's a specific number of meetings between now and then that needs to occur. As indicated in the staff report, the applicant is looking to schedule a neighborhood meeting to receive comment and feedback from the neighbors, and depending on the reaction of the neighbors, that may allow the project to move forward, or require the applicant to go back and tweak their plans and maybe make some amendments and then bring it forward. So that will add to the time frame as well. So it's very difficult for me to say yes or no as to whether or not the application will be approved before the election.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments. Yes, I appreciate anyone can apply, but I was just surprised that it was recommended in the staff report to go to first and second reading. So I hope I'm not reading too much into that, but that seems like a stamp of approval. And I know you co-authored, I enjoyed working with you on the OCP committee. You co-authored the OCP 2019 OCP, so that's why I'm just surprised that this would be entertained, such a big change. But if we're now disregarding the OCP land designation and disregarding the zoning bylaw, through you to Director Limshu, what are the new rules? For example, we have 1 acre properties everywhere from Sebastian Road waterfront to Lantzville Road to Lantzville Road waterfront to Dickinson Road waterfront, Peterson Road, Leyland Road up in Upper Lantzville as well. And so that's sort of my question. The community must be wondering, what are the new rules if you have a 1 acre property or more and you're on sewer and water, or you don't even have to be as long as you can pay to get it there. Can you explain what?
Your Worship, through the council, there are no new rules. I mean, the rules have been in place for as long as I can remember, and they're they're basically the same for every jurisdiction. We're all governed by the Local Government Act, and the Act outlines the rules in terms of process for amending the bylaw. With respect to this specific application, I think council and the community have to look at the merits of the application. What is being put on the table? There's a lot of focus on the proposed R7 area, but included in this proposal are 2 other zones, which allow for a variety of single-family parcel sizes. So there's the R1 zone, where the minimum parcel size, if approved, would be ½ an acre. The R2 zone, if approved, would be 1/3 of an acre. And then the R7 zone that you've alluded to. I think the other thing, too, when you look at page 213 of the agenda, that's attachment number 2 of the report. And basically, that attachment outlines or indicates the surrounding zoning for these parcels. So to the south, you have the Foothills project. To the east, the properties are zoned R1. To the north is estate, and that property owner has made application to rezone as well. But beyond those properties, the existing subdivisions are both R1 and R2. So I think, one of the benefits of this project, it's not just, pardon the term, a one-trick pony. The applicants has made a concerted effort to provide a variety of housing types on the parcel. And the density is moving away from the more suburban area through to the rural, where the parcel sizes go from, the R7 zone through to the R1.
Yeah, no, that answers my question. But so what you're saying then, the new rule is, from what I was gleaning from what you were saying, is that if you live and they're not adjacent to any, it's a fair distance across a couple of roads to the R1, and the other way it's a couple of 5-acre properties plus a road before you get to the R1. So is this what you're saying, that if you're somewhat close to different zoning, then that could be a reason to match that zoning? Thank you.
It's certainly a point to consider. Just to be clear, I didn't say there were any new rules. What I'm saying, just so that we're clear, is that each application will be judged on its merits. And what I did say is that there are some merits to this project worth considering.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, well, and then next one is...
That's your time.
well, I'm just asking questions here. If you could say point of order, please, Councillor Gesselbrecht, instead of just calling out. Thank you.
My apologies. I didn't know my mic was unmuted.
Okay, so are there any, usually I don't time questions, Councillor Gesselbrecht, but fair enough if we want to ask any other councillors if they have any comments, please. Okay, well, I'll just wrap up with my comments. Thank you for your answers, Director Limshu. But for me, if we're looking at, for my third round I'm speaking, if we're looking at the idea of that because you may be some distance from a different type of zoning, there's nothing in the zoning bylaw or the OCP that says you're entitled to then use that as justification for your zone. And I would point out, if this is a state residential, minimum 1 acre going down to 1/3 acre, that's like R1, half an acre, going down to like 0.16, 0.17 of an acre. It's the same thing. You're tripling the density and going from 1 acre down to R7, which in my calculation, depending on the condition, could be, this one's 7.5 units per acre. My calculation, it could go up to as high as 15 units per acre in certain conditions. That it's just completely inappropriate, and I'm completely opposed to this after spending so much time in the OCP and all the support the OCP has. So I will leave it at that for this motion. Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, Acting Mayor Savage is opposed. So the motion's carried with Acting Mayor Savage opposed. And the next item, if you just give me a moment here, please. The next item is 9F, second motion of 9F. I'll make the motion. It's the third motion of 9F. Which is that District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150, 2019, Amendment 6671 and 6685/6685B, Harwood Drive, bylaw number 313, 2022, is consistent with the District of Lantzville financial plan and the relevant waste management plans. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Proctor, seconded. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Acting Mayor Savage is opposed, so the motion carries with Acting Mayor Savage opposed. And just before we get on to the next, my apologies, I should have asked Director Limshu, is there applicant, would they like to speak to this beforehand?
The applicant's representative or agent is in the audience to answer any questions that council may have with respect to this particular item.
Okay, I just trusted someone would have told me if they wanted to make a presentation before, but that's not the case then, eh? Yeah, thank you. So for the next item, we've got 9G, first motion, bylaw number 314, and I'll make the motion that District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, amendment 6671 and 6685/6685B Harwood Drive, bylaw number 314, 2022, be given first reading. Do we have a seconder? All right, Councillor Wilson, seconded. On any discussion on this motion? This is, I'm sorry, that was first reading, no discussion. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Acting Mayor Savage is opposed. It carries with Acting Mayor Savage opposed. Next motion, which is 9G, second motion, that District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, amendment 6671 and 6685/6685B Harwood Drive, bylaw number 314, 2022, be given second reading. Seconder? All right, Councillor Wilson, any discussion on this? Seconder first. Any other councillors discuss? Yes, for me, some comments. For me, I think it's important to understand that individual residents with their properties, they look to fairness in the community, and they have certain rules that are in place, I call them, which are zoning bylaws and OCP policies. And when they're buying here or when they do renovations to their house or improvements to the yard, whatever they do, they invest their life and time into their properties. And they have certain expectations of stability. And when something this radical of a zoning change and an OCP amendment happens, the first question they ask is, well, does this apply to me? Can I do exactly the same thing? And that's what they ask. And if this is approved and no one else can do it, they think it's very unfair that one property can do this and they can't. And the other effect it has on residents, they expect that if they live in an area of R1 zoning, single-family houses, minimum lot size, where you can apply for rezoning down to 0.237 acre lot size with the suggested amenities or prescribed amenities, I should say, on the OCP, that's their expectation. They don't have this idea that someone's going to build a three-story duplex beside them, or three-story apartments rather beside them, or patio homes to 7.5 units per acre. They don't expect this. So that's the two ways it affects residents. And they want to be assured before elections. And I know both of you, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Proctor, you made the right promises before the election to follow the OCP. So if you could please speak to that, why now you're not following the OCP and want to
Objection.
break it, I'd appreciate that. Yes, yeah, just call point of order.
Point of order, sorry.
Yes.
If we could focus.
Okay, just a sec, Councillor Wilson. Just wait till the chair asks you what your point of order is. So go ahead, Councillor Wilson. What's your point of order?
The point of order is that we're off topic. We're not speaking to the merits of the application, Councillor Savage. So you can please, I'm just asking you keep your comments to the application and just asking you stop referring to councillors individually and you speak to council in general. Thank you.
Okay, well, just if I could, I'll make a ruling on that. But just before I do, just as a suggestion, Councillor Wilson, if you feel uncomfortable at any time that there's comments you're not comfortable with, you may want to try a point of privilege and to state that. The other thing, if you hear comments you don't feel or in contradiction to the council code of conduct, that's a legitimate point of order, because I consider points of order anything that's contrary to our current legislation procedure-wise. So that's just a tip. My ruling on this is that what I'm doing is within the context of this plan, in that we're proposing to break the OCP. And if you feel my questions are off base, I'll appreciate that. Certainly listening to you, if I just may explain myself, all I'm trying to do is it's important that council has transparency. And when we're making decisions on major precedent-setting rezoning applications, I'm just trying to encourage councillors to speak, give you reasons why you're supporting it. It's much more satisfactory, whatever your point of view is, to speak to it and not just sit in silence. And I'm respectfully trying to address that. So it's entirely up to you, but I'm hoping you can speak to this and not just pass it in silence, for residents would like to hear the reasons. So thank you.
I'm going to challenge that ruling and ask that the vote be taken to sustain the chair.
You're out of order, Councillor.
I'll second that challenge.
Okay, Councillor Gesselbrack, the proper way to conduct this is you call point of order, and then I ask what your point of order is, and then you speak to it. You don't just call out and start making the argument. So if you could do that, please. I assume you've just called a point of order. And now what is your point of order, please?
Challenging your ruling and asking to take a vote whether the chair be sustained.
I second that challenge.
Can you tell me what my ruling was, Councillor Gesselbrack?
Well, from what I could glean is that it was okay for you to say that Councillor Wilson was not following the OCP. And that's what he objected to. And you evidently ruled that it was okay under the guise of transparency and getting councillors to speak. And so I'm challenging that ruling.
Well, I'm not clear on what the ruling is. You've said a number of things there. So if I could clarify my ruling, and then you're welcome to see if to challenge it to see if it's sustained. I simply made the ruling that bringing up the OCP is critical to this application because this involves not following the OCP. Breaking the OCP is what's being proposed. Number two, I said that I appreciated what Councillor Wilson said, that he's not comfortable me mentioning things that were said before the election. I took that to heart and showed that I listened to him. Number three, I explained myself. That's not a ruling. I simply explained myself that what I was trying to achieve was to, for the sake of what residents would like to hear, I was hoping to encourage residents to speak. So the only ruling I think you could say I made was that it was perfectly legitimate to discuss the OCP, the proposal to break the OCP or not follow the OCP, if you will. In terms of my other ruling, there were no rulings. I accepted Councillor Wilson's request not to do what I was doing, and I acknowledged that and listened to it, which I won't do again. So I listened to him on that. And the next thing was simply explaining myself, which wasn't a ruling. So technically the ruling you want to challenge me on is that we have a right as councillors to speak to the OCP being proposed to be not followed in this application. So go ahead, Councillor Gesselbrack, if you still want to challenge that ruling, which
Well,
I just explained.
I think you've cleared it up, Chair, and so let's move on.
Thank you. So so that was my talk, the first round. Do we have any other councillors wishing to speak? Yes, Councillor Wilson, thank you.
I just want to, it's an exercise in fairness, and I heard this said by yourself, Acting Mayor Savage, is that any resident in the community has the ability to apply to rezone their property and to apply to make changes to the OCP. Any resident. We're not making a change today in the OCP or in the zoning of the property. All we're simply doing is allowing this to go, well, by my judgment here, passing first and second reading and allowing it to go to a public hearing so that we can hear what the residents have to say. That's it. I'm not accusing me or Councillor Proctor of breaking the OCP today is not accurate. It's not fair. I appreciate you educating me, but it's not needed. So if we could just try to get to the point in what we're looking for here, that would be much appreciated, I'm sure, by all of council. And that's all I will say.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, councillors? Okay, for my round two, I will just point this out. For me, I'm not prepared to pass second reading because I'm being, in my mind, my reasons not to be is I'm being faithful to the zoning bylaw, which was just passed in 2020, where a state residential specifically was brought up and was the topic for a number of months. And number two, as I'd mentioned previously, I'm not even passing second reading due to its, completely contradicting the OCP in the most basic way, which is ignoring the land designation of 1 acre minimum parcel size. So I've given my reasons, so I'm simply not even prepared. And the other facet to this is if this now passes and goes to a public hearing, we're once again, especially if it's in the summer, which it shouldn't be, but we are now asking residents to come out yet again and to make their views known on what they thought was a settled issue in both the zoning bylaw and the OCP. So it's just not fair to residents to continually challenge them to have to come out and make their case. That's getting back to my whole reference to stability and peace in the community, where you have an issue that's settled. It's not this continual going against the wishes of residents. It creates a community in turmoil. And this is exactly what I think this does. So I will leave it at that for my comments. Any other comments from council? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
We have,
I'm sorry. I
Point of
had my
order, you
hand up
have
to
2
speak.
members of council with their hands up.
So did Council Gesselbrack.
Okay, could we just take this one at a time, please? I'm not understanding people. Just call a point of order so I can hear who wants to speak first, please.
I called a point of order to advise you that you had 2 members of council that had their hands up. Councilor Gesselbrack has his hand up, and Councilor Proctor had her hands up.
Okay, thank you. And so with councilors, if I don't see it, I apologize. I don't have a computer in front of me here. So how about you use the same call, just say I would like to speak or point of order, please. I apologize for that. So who's next, please? Yep, Councillor Gesselbrack.
Thank you. From my point of view, what we had in Lantzville was an artificial bar to development for many years, not just since incorporation, but well before that. And that artificial bar was the issue of water. And it really, the trail to getting water really started with the Jack DeJong Council when an agreement was hatched with the city of Nanaimo. The subsequent council was able to hook up the water, pass various bylaws to implement the Nanaimo-Lantzville Water Agreement. And finally, we have water. We have an abundance. We have a redundancy of water. We have well water. We have the potential for water from the city of Nanaimo for 50 to 60 years. And what that did was remove that artificial bar so that folks who have been here for 40 years and were continuously told by staff and council that I'm sorry, we just can't do anything because we don't have water, that no longer is an excuse. And so I suspect that that is the reason that we're seeing more applications for amendments to the OCP and rezoning to allow people to meet the goals of the OCP, that is diversity of housing, extending the water system, extending the sewer system, so that everybody in Lantzville has that ability. And that is part of the issue with this particular application, extending district water to what was before a state residential and the potential for extending sewer. So I think that was a main issue that is bringing, is allowing people, we're talking to fairness, we're being fair to residents now that if they want to bring an application, bring the application and we'll go through the process. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, please.
I think that it would be really detrimental to the community if we didn't follow the process outlined in the legislation that requires us to look at rezoning applications. I think it would be unfair not to listen or ask people's opinion of what they think, or to give our neighbors an opportunity to rezone their land as they're allowed to under the laws that govern the province of BC. So I think that fundamentally, council should be fair to everyone on council, to each other, and to all of our neighbors. And if I was to sit here and speak as if I know what everyone thinks and what everyone thinks of the OCP and what they think of zoning and what's going to upset people and what's going to divide them, then I would be contributing to a divisive community. And I prefer to let these zoning applications go to public hearing so that people have an opportunity to develop their land the way that they see fit, and their neighbors have an opportunity to let us know what they think, so that I don't presume what other people think, and I don't presume that this application is going to be causing divisiveness. Because in fact, refusing the application, telling people what they think, putting words in people's mouth is what creates divisiveness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speaker? Councillor Wilson, thank you.
Yeah, for myself, I'm looking forward to what the neighbors to this particular property think. And I don't think, I heard that they're continually going against the wishes of residents. Well, I'm not sure if the residents that are right next door to this particular property / applicant were aware when the OCP was written that property potentially could develop. So all we're doing is sending it to a public hearing for the community, especially the neighboring residents, to hear what they think about it. And right now, the way I look at it, when we went through that review, I think it was Director Slater way back when we did I don't know if it was an asset management review, but all of the neighborhoods were individually evaluated as to whether they were revenue contributing to the community or if they were call it revenue draining, that they weren't actually paying their fair shares, and certain neighborhoods were actually contributing to the rural life that other people like to enjoy. So all this neighborhood would potentially do, and we'll see what the community thinks about it and what especially the neighboring residents right beside the property think about it, would actually help make that Winchelsea neighborhood be a bit more revenue contributing to our community. And, I'm seeing emails from residents seeing what happened with their taxes this year. And yeah, they're not fun emails to read, but the reason why we're in that situation is mainly because a lot of our neighborhoods cost us money, and they're only going to cost us more money as inflation increases. What is it going to cost to fix the pipes in the ground or to fix the roads in 5 years from now? Way more than they are right now. So this is why I think as a council, we need to consider these applications. We need to see what the residents think within the community, especially the neighboring residents. And it comes down to two things. Are we as a community prepared to pay more money exponentially to enjoy the lifestyle that we have here? And secondly, how much of an impact is this particular development going to have on neighboring people's lifestyles? And I guess we'll see if this motion passes. So those are my thoughts. And that's why I feel that we as a council need to consider this application and allow it to go to a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Prochnow.
I forgot to mention that there's a property owner that owns a property extremely close to here that was interested in building 38 homes on their 5-acre lot not that long ago. So with no donation of parkland. So I'm thinking there are people in that neighborhood that have a vision that includes lots this small or smaller.
Any other speakers? Okay, I'll just finish off with a couple of comments for myself. And both the OCP and the zoning already have water and sewer built into it. It gives the prescribed density, assuming there's water. So just because the water may have become available doesn't give a reason to vastly increase the density. It's already written in. It was 2019. That was a mere 3 years ago. The zoning was a mere 2 years ago. So we've already accounted for water. People are welcome to proceed. We've already laid out the groundwork of what our expectations are, how to proceed, and that's under the rules of the zoning, under the rules of the OCP. So the water per se is not a factor in increasing density. So, and in terms of the economics, I would respectfully have to disagree. It's been a proven fact in other municipalities that residential development does not necessarily lower taxes. It rarely does. So no matter how much you build of residential, I highly doubt the taxes are going to come down. And the other factor with taxes is the less expensive, let's lower the tax assessed value of new properties, the more of the total share, the high tax assessed values of properties go up. And the reverse is true. The high tax assessed valued properties like the foothills, as we brought up tonight, they pay more than their equal share of taxes. So that's my analysis financially of it, is that you're not going to see taxes go down by adding residential properties. So I will leave it at that. Anyone else to speak before I call the question?
I'd like to speak again, please, Jamie.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
I just want to make it very clear that I never said that it would lower taxes. That's not, I appreciate that taxes always do increase. What I think that in potentially considering neighborhoods like this or small infill developments like this does, is takes the pressure off to increase taxes. When you do the math, if you have one or say 2 or 3 estate residential homes with the same water pipe going in front of it, the same sewer pipe going in front of it, that's 3 homes. Yeah, sure, those homes may be assessed at more, paying their taxes, contributing to the pipe that's going in front of them, the sewer and the water. But then if you took more homes on that and put an infill development on this particular proposal or any other infill potential proposal, like, and there's been some others, you're ultimately getting more people paying for the infrastructure that's in front of them, the roads, the pipe in the ground. So, and I'm not suggesting that this is something that's going to pass. I'm just saying that let's see what the other residents within the community think. It would be one thing if this was like something way up on Lorenzen Lane, and it was, where it's completely removed and there's so many estate residential parcels that are in between, say, that property and the Winchelsea's or the half-acre lots on the Winds. We're talking about a development that neighbors other properties right next to it that are much smaller. So that's just why I think that as council, we need to see what the community thinks with this particular development. And that's, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to say anything more on this particular development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for...
I would like to speak one more time.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Proctor. I apologize for not seeing the hands, so feel free to just call out a point of order. I'd like to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I've used the hand raise function and raised my hand, and I will just speak out next time. I think that there's a difference between expecting a residential area to lower the taxes for a town and having a land use economist who's trained in financially analyzing we use tell us that a residential area is revenue neutral. And we've looked at that as a council, and we would be negligent if we allowed neighborhoods to be built that aren't revenue neutral, that would cost the town. And it's a proven fact that that happens and has happened and will continue to happen in North America through the next millennium. And we don't need it to happen in Lantzville. No one's suggesting that by using the opinion of a trained land use economist to tell us if a neighborhood is revenue neutral is going to lower taxes. Nobody is suggesting that, and certainly not a trained financial land use analysis. And the reason that water and sewer is important to this neighborhood is because they weren't available in this neighborhood until just a short time ago. And people couldn't build according to Island Health on a property if they needed to put a septic tank and a well on less than 2.5 acres. So it simply flat out wasn't possible to develop this land until the sewer was completed in the Winchelseas and the water line was drawn up through the foothills. So water and sewer has everything to do with this, and it has nothing to do with what it says about water and sewer in the OCP. Thank you.
All right, so just my last comment, and then I'll call the question. Well, there's no other discussion, and that's I look to empirical evidence more so than theoretical, and I just look at the foothills. It's been an economic windfall, and the properties are quite spread out there. So anyway, is there any other comments before I call the question, please? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Acting Mayor Savage opposed. The motion.
Point of order, can you see our hands when we vote? I'm just curious.
Okay, if you could wait till I'm finished speaking, please, Councillor Proctor. So the motion carries with Acting Mayor Savage opposed. And if you want to ask a question, if you'd use point of privilege doing so, please, Councillor Proctor, when I'm finished speaking.
Point of whatever I'm supposed to use. Can you see my hand when I'm voting, or do I need to call that out?
Councillor Proctor, I'm a stickler on proper process, and the process I just gave you. You call out point of privilege.
Point of whatever you'd like me to say.
No,
can you see my hand when I'm voting, or do I need to call out?
That question I won't answer. Thank you. On to the next item. I'm calling a conflict of interest. I perceive conflict of interest, and so I'll be excusing myself from the meeting, so it's up to you to take over from here. Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, point of order. We're still on item G, I understand.
I apologize, thank you. All right, next item, G, which I believe is the...
My records indicate we're on the third motion of item G. You just voted on the second reading?
Yep.
It's next one.
Yes, it's over the page, thank you.
Number 9. On page 3.
See, one of the problems is it's so dark in this corner. I'm not having my usual good reading light. So the motion then, just let me read it here, please.
If you prefer, I could read it and then you could say.
Yes, if someone would, if you could read that, please. I can't quite see where it is. Thank you.
That the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment applicant for 6671 and 6685/6685B Harwood Drive be requested to host a public information meeting with the surrounding neighborhood and provide for information the results of the public information meeting.
Okay, and could I ask you, please, Director Coates, to read that again? I wasn't quite following that. And could you give the number on the agenda you're referring to again, please?
It's the same agenda number.
Yeah,
You're
could
on
you
item
say it, please?
9G,
Just if it's
item
not.
9G, bylaw number 314.
Okay, just a sec, please. Just a sec. I must follow this. So you said 9G.
G,
All right, just a moment. All right, 9G.
bylaw number 314.
Yes, and which of the two motions, the first or the second or third?
It is the third motion.
Okay, just a moment, please.
You've already done the first two motions. We're on page 3 of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. If you could, that's understood now. So
Yeah.
do we have a,
That the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment applicant for 6671 and 6685/6685B Harwood Drive be requested to host a public information meeting with the surrounding neighborhood and provide full information, the results of the public information meeting.
okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, so I'm recording here the mover.
Seconder, Councillor Proctor. And I'm sorry, Director Coates, what was that?
So I would be recording that you were the mover on that, so moved.
It's a little difficult hearing you. Where I am at, we just made a motion. The third one.
I
Okay,
read
just
the
a sec,
motion.
Director Coates, please. 9G, the third motion, we just made that motion. I just asked it to be seconded. Council Proctor just seconded it. So now could you please say what you were saying?
That I cannot make a motion. I'm a staff person. I just want to confirm that you said so moved, that you had moved.
I see.
this
Okay,
motion.
thank you. All right, I
Thank
found
you.
it now. So I'll make the motion that the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment applicant for 6671 and 6685/6685B Harwood Drive be requested to host a public information meeting with the surrounding neighborhood and provide for information the results of the public information meeting. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Proctor, any discussion? Okay. My discussion is I received a letter that said this information meeting will be actually tomorrow at Costin Hall. So any other comments? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Acting Mayor Savage opposed. Motion carries with Acting Mayor Savage opposed. So now we're on to bylaw number 315, number 9H.
Sorry, point of order.
And I'll be
Point of order. You're still on item G. There's 4 motions to that item. Would you like me to read the 4th motion?
All right, I see that. I apologize again. I'm finding it hard reading this here. Number 4, that a public hearing for official community plan amendment bylaw number 313 and zoning amendment bylaw number 314 being scheduled to be held after a public information meeting is held. Seconder for that? Councillor Proctor, any discussion? To the seconder, any other councillors? Okay, and my comment on this with public hearings is, as I've said with others, we've already got a major one in July 13th. There may be amendments and further things involved in that. So my preference would certainly be, And I think I'm reflecting what a lot of residents would think too, is to have this public hearing in September, not in the summer months. It's just before the August break. And I think a lot of people are just wanting to celebrate a bit that COVID's a little bit on the downturn. They can get out and do things, making plans and so on. I've noticed that personally, that many people I know are doing a lot of things in July. So that's my input. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, Acting Mayor Savage opposed. The motion carries with Acting Mayor Savage opposed. So now we're on to 9H, bylaw number 315. So it's time to excuse myself for declared conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest. So I'll leave it in your hands, Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Point of order. At this point, you need to state the general reason why you're in conflict. So usually it's like I own the property, or I'm next to a neighbor, or it's a family member.
Yes, I stated that earlier in great detail, the general reasons.
Yeah,
It's on the record. I did that earlier in the meeting.
Yes, you described.
Okay, just a sec, Director Coates, if you could just wait till I finish speaking. So what you're saying is, reading it at the beginning of the meeting, my general reasons and specific reasons is procedurally not adequate?
I had asked at that time, and you cut me off. I had asked you to give a summary because I didn't understand, for the record, because we don't, you gave a lot of information about the process and the law and referenced some sections. What you need to do is make a statement of the general reason that you are declaring a conflict, for example, because you are a neighbor, or because it is a friend, or it's an acquaintance,
Yes,
a general short reason that we will put in the minutes.
Yeah.
And just for clarity, that you will be staying out. So this is item H, and I think you said you were going to stay out until K.
Okay.
So just so staff know when to call you back in, they would call you back in just before item 10.
Yeah, the Local Government Act does require giving a general reason. That's correct. I thought I'd done that. However, if you'd like it again for your minutes, the general reason is because of the proximity of these two lots to my home, that there may be a perceived conflict of interest, that I have a distinct or a distinct or separate from the general public. So that's why I called the conflict of interest. So I'll let you take over. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Wilson, point of privilege. I need a 2-minute break, please.
Yeah, okay. We'll break for 2 minutes and we'll resume. Yeah, I'll time it.
Yeah, right.
Testing, can everyone hear me? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay. Director Coates, I can't hear you. Is it okay that we start back with the meeting?
Yes, and I just wanted council to acknowledge that contrary to the procedure bylaw, the chair of the meeting at this point, because of the unexpected absence, is zooming in, and just want to acknowledge that council has agreed to that. Thank you.
All right, now moving in our agenda to, I believe it is here, 9H, bylaw number 315. I'll read it for the audience and council. The District of Lantzville Official Community Plan bylaw number 150, 2019 amendment in bracket 6701 Harwood Drive and bracket bylaw number 315, 2022 be given first reading. Okay, so it is seconded by Councillor Gesselbrecht, moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Gesselbrecht. There's no discussion given that it's just at first reading. So now we'll move on to the next one. Councillor Gesselbrecht, you have a question or point of order?
We have to take a vote on it.
Oh. All right, yeah, so we'll vote now. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving on, the District of Lantzville Official Community Plan bylaw number 150, 2019 amendment 6701 Harwood Drive in brackets, bylaw number 315, 2022 be given second reading. Okay, moved by Councillor Gesselbrecht, seconded by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion. So we'll move to calling to question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving on.
And for clarity, the record will show that these last two motions were carried unanimously.
Yeah, okay. Moving on, the District of Lantzville Official Community Plan bylaw number 150, 2019 amendment in bracket 6701 Harwood Drive and bracket bylaw number 315 2022 is consistent with the District's Lantzville financial plan and the relevant waste management plans. Okay, moved by Councillor Proctor. Do we have a seconder? Wait.
I'm sorry, just a point of order. If you read the motion, then you're making the motion.
Okay.
And one of us will make the second. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing, well, to Councillor Proctor, you were the seconder? No, okay. So we'll move to calling to question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now moving on in the agenda to I, which is bylaw number 316, the District of Lantzville zoning bylaw. I'll make the motion. The District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020 amendment 6701 Harwood Drive, bylaw 316, 2022 be given first reading. Carried, all those in favor, carried unanimously. Moving on.
I'm sorry. Who was the seconder on that motion?
Sorry, seconded by Councillor Proctor. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Proctor. We'll vote again just for the record. So all those in favor? So carried unanimously. That District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number one, moving on, sorry, the District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020 amendment 6701 Harwood Drive, bylaw 316, 2022 be given second reading. seconded by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion on the motion?
I don't know if Director Limshu has any introduction for the bylaw.
Okay, I don't see, is Director Limshu must be in chambers because I can't see him. Any direction on the bylaw, Director Limshu?
Apologies, Your Worship, through the council. Yes, you cannot see us given the current situation. I think the proposed OCP amendment and zoning bylaw amendment are pretty straightforward. If you refer to pages 238 of the staff report, it indicates what's being proposed. The current properties designated estate residential. The zoning is estate. The applicants are seeking an amendment to the OCP and the zoning to change that estate zone to R2. On page 238, if you take a look at, on page 252, if you take a look at that attachment, you'll actually see that the surrounding property in close proximity are also zoned R2. So these are existing neighborhoods on Clark Crescent, Fermar, Ainsworth.
Okay, thank you, Director Limshu. So Councilor Proctor, you were the seconder. Do you want to speak to this? I'll just speak to it briefly. I think I made this point earlier that we're not, I am interested in what the community has to say about this. For me, why I would be looking at this and open to seeing this go to a public hearing. And I know we're not speaking about that till the next statement, but to me it's a potential development right beside an existing neighborhood where all of the lots are they're proposing something similar to what is what neighbors to or close to. So I'll just move to calling to question. All those in favor? Motion carries. All right, moving on. That the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment application for 6701 Harwood Drive be requested to host a public information meeting with the surrounding neighborhood and provide for information, the results of the public information meeting. So I move, seconded by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion on this? Councillor Proctor, do you have anything you want to say? No? Okay. So I'll move to calling to question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving on, that a public hearing for official community plan amendment bylaw number 315 and zoning amendment bylaw number 316 be scheduled to be held after a public information meeting is held. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Proctor. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move to calling to question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving on now to J, bylaw number 317. I'll make the motion again. That District of Lantzville official community plan bylaw number 150, 2019, amendment in brackets 6717 Harwood Drive and bracket bylaw number 317, 2022 be given first reading. We have a seconder on the motion. Councillor Proctor. Given that it's first reading, there's no discussion on this. So all those in favor? Carries unanimously. Motion carries. Next, the District of Lantzville official community plan bylaw number 150, 2019, amendment in bracket 6717 Harwood Drive and bracket bylaw number 317, 2022 be given second reading. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Proctor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on again, the District of Lantzville Official Community Plan bylaw number 150, 2019 amendment in brackets 6717 Harwood Drive, bylaw number 317, 2022 is consistent with the District of Lantzville financial plan and the relevant waste management plans. So sorry, we have something from the chamber.
Thank you, Your Worship. With Council's indulgence, I was just going to give a brief explanation of this bylaw. Similar to the previous application that Council dealt with, this proposal is essentially the mirror image of the previous application. The property is 5 acres. It's currently designated estate residential. The zoning is estate. The applicants put forward is putting forward an amendment application to change or to amend the OCP designation from estate residential to allow for rezoning to occur, and that zoning would be changed from estate to residential 2. As with the previous application, the subject property is immediately adjacent to properties that are currently zoned R2. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Lemshu. So sorry, Councillor Proctor, did I ask you if you, as a seconder, if you wanted to say anything? No, okay. So I'll move then to seeing no other hands up. I'll move to calling to question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Now moving on to K, bylaw number 318. I'll make the motion again. The District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020 amendment in brackets 6717 Harwood Drive, bylaw number 318, 2022 be given first reading. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Proctor. There is no discussion on this, so I'll move to calling to question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next item, the District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, amendment in brackets 6717 Harwood Drive, bylaw number 318, 2022 be given second reading. Do I have a seconder on this motion? Councillor Proctor. Any discussion? Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, I notice on this, I'm looking at page 109 of the second segment of the agenda, and it's the plot plan showing what the 14 lots plus a park. So my question is that last little area closest to the end of Ald's Road, it says park. Now, is that's the park that's given as the park dedication?
That's correct. That's the proposed 5% park dedication that would be obtained at the time of subdivision.
So when does staff or when do we evaluate the value of the park dedication? Is it before the subdivision is granted, or is it after?
Generally speaking, when the approving officer reviews whether or not a park is required, either by through land dedication or through cash in lieu contribution, the reference made to the OCP. The OCP has a map that indicates generally where the community would like to see neighborhood parks. This has been spoken to in previous meetings. Typically, it's represented by a little star. So if you look at the parks map of the OCP, there is an icon, a star icon in that general neighborhood that indicates that the approving officer should consider land dedication as opposed to cash in lieu contribution. I think the applicant in this case is simply recognizing the fact that the OCP does speak to or does it identify potential for park dedication in that area. As well, they're also they've also recognized that, should the bylaws be amended, it'll be different from the land use designations to the west, and those lands are currently designated rural, and so this park area, if you will, would act as a bit of a buffer between the proposed R2 zone and the existing rural zone.
Okay. My question was actually, if the developer is giving cash in lieu, when is the value of the cash in lieu determined?
It'll be determined prior to registration of the subdivision. So the cash in lieu value is determined through an appraisal, and that appraisal is predicated on the zoning of the land at that point in time. So as it currently sits today, the property is currently zoned estate. Should the bylaws be approved and the zoning's changed from estate to R2, the appraised value would be predicated on the R2 zone and not the estate zone.
Okay. So I note that on the previous application across the street that they also dedicated the end for park. I know, as I ride my mountain bike up there, that is the entrance to get up to the woodlot. There's a lot of traffic. Parking is a problem. And I note that on the even the previous application to this, the two previous ones, that they're talking about dedicating parking land or land for parking. Could this also be used for parking, these two end pieces?
The concept that's in front of council right now is really to dedicate those lands as park, and what that looks like, at the end of the day will be up to the district. The application that you're referring to, where there was mention of providing parking, that parking is actually going to be provided within the existing road right of way, so it would be an off-site improvement. So this is the rezoning application that was proposing the R1, the R2, and the R7 zone as part of their amenities package, if you will. It included off-site work to provide a proper parking area within the neighboring road right-of-way.
No, I just note that it's a very popular entrance up into the woodlot for hikers and bikers, and so I'm glad to see that there will be some additional parking, and perhaps when staff gets to development permit, that maybe part of the park, these two park ends, could also be used for that. But that's for a different day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Gusselrecht and Director Lynch. So is there any second-time speaker, first-time speakers, second-time speakers? Hearing none, I'll move to calling to question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, that the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment applicant for 6717 Harwood Drive be requested to host a public information meeting with the surrounding neighborhood and provide, for information, the results of the public information meeting. We have a seconder on the motion. Seconded by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll move to calling to question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Next, that a public hearing for official community plan amendment bylaw number 317 and zoning amendment bylaw number 318 be scheduled to be held after a public information meeting is held. Do I have a seconder on the motion? Seconded by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion? Councillor Proctor, you as the seconder. Nothing? Okay. Councillor Gusselrecht? No. So I will move then to calling to question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And I think now,
Staff just need a moment to call Councillor Savage or Acting Mayor Savage back in the room.
okay, we'll just have a 1 minute recess then.
Okay, we're on to item 10A, Village South Information Request. And I'll read the motion as on the floor. And I would move we postpone this motion to the July 6th meeting. Do we have a seconder for that? Okay, seconded by Councillor Wilson. And with referral motions, we can debate. So, Councillor Wilson, any comments? Okay, anyone on council? All right, the only reason I'm doing it is these are Mayor Swain's motions, so I thought it'd be a little more appropriate if he can be present at the next meeting when they're brought up. So I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Point of order.
Yes, thank you.
Staff understood that Mayor Swain was going to be absent from that meeting, as perhaps his plans have changed.
Oh, okay. So what's the meeting after that, please, Director Coates? July 20th?
July 20th.
Okay. So I'll correct that. Thank you. The motion's been seconded, so I would like to make an amendment to that motion. I'll amend it by striking July 6th and in its place putting July 22nd. Okay, do I have a seconder for that?
Sorry, it's the 20th?
July 20th, yeah. I'll strike that, replace it with July 20th. So I have a seconder for that. Okay, Councillor Wilson seconds. So we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries with Councillor Proctor opposed.
And sorry, you did that as an amendment motion? So now on the main motion is amended?
On the main motion as amended, all those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, Councillor Proctor's opposed. The motion carries with Councillor Proctor opposed. Now on to item number 10A, number 2. I'll read the motion. It's a motion on the floor that if the applicant, Lantzville Project Limited, makes improvements and or changes to their application as a result of the May 4th, 2022 Council Resolution C-2262 and C-2264 for both 1, District of Lantzville Official Community Plan, Bylaw number 150, 2019, Amendment Village South Special Area Plan, Bylaw number 283, 2021, and 2, District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw number 180, 2020, Amendment Village South Special Area Plan Zone Bylaw number 284, 2021, then the applicant must hold an in-person public engagement session to present the proposed application improvements to the public prior to council, considering third reading of bylaw number 283 and bylaw number 284. Do we have a seconder? Okay, the motion fails for lack of a seconder. On to the next item, which is number 3, 10A, number 3, that the applicant of Village South Development be requested to include policies.
Sorry, could we just back up to the last one?
Yeah.
You said that fails due to lack of a seconder.
Yes.
That motion was, the main motion was on the floor. And sorry, was it what failed due to lack of a seconder was a motion to.
Oh, thank you. All right, if it was already on the floor, it was already seconded. All right, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you. So we'll call the question, or rather my comments on that is to also refer this to the this motion to the July 22nd meeting. Do we have a seconder? Okay, the referral motion fails. I'll call the question on the main motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, the motion fails with Councillors Gesselbrack, Proctor, and Wilson opposed. Now we're on to 10A3, proposed, and
So these next two motions.
this is a reconsideration, yeah.
Yes, so
Thank
they
you.
don't need a mover or seconder.
Okay, so.
They are required reconsideration.
Yeah, so with this one then, motion, I move to refer this to the July 22nd meeting. Do we have a seconder for that? All right, the referral motion fails for lack of seconder. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion is defeated with Councillors Gesselbrack, Proctor, Wilson opposed. And we now on to 10A number 3. And this again is a reconsideration, so no seconders required. I move this motion be referred to the July 22nd or 20th council meeting 2022. Do I have a seconder? Motion fails due to a seconder. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion's defeated with Councillors Gesselbrack, Proctor, and Wilson opposed. So we're next on to item, we've covered that one. So this is a recommendation from Councillor Savage, the Peterson Road Beach Road end. I will read the motion. That the District of Lantzville support in principle planning for restoration work for a nature area in the right-of-way of the Peterson Road Beach Road end post-development works, completion by the fall, and subject to reports to council for approval of work plan, including some use of volunteers, design, funding, and communication consultation plan. Do we have a seconder for this motion? Okay, seconded by...
I'll second it for discussion, Councillor Savage.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll comment on it. Just basically the reason for this is there was a lot of disappointment with the works on the Peterson Road end, which was generally enjoyed by people as somewhat of a sanctuary nature area. So I thought as a bit of a healing process, a bit of a resolution, trying to bring some goodness out of it, is to restore this to a nature area and hopefully use some of the timber from the old tree that was removed, which now in safekeeping with the district. It's been cut into sections. There's about 6 sections now. And it could involve volunteers, involving the community and having a say in what they like to see in this area. And it's a very popular area for people walking, and there's a nice memorial there tucked in behind the remaining trees. So that's basically the idea. This is just to kickstart the start of the process. Nothing will be done. Apparently, these works are going on till the fall. So nothing will be done until the fall. It just gives time for a little preparation and to mention it now so that residents can see some resolution on the horizon. And then at that point, we'll start the formal process. So it's just basically kickstarting the initial stages and going from there. That's it. Thank you. Councillor Proctor.
Through you to staff, I'm wondering if staff had a plan in place before they cut the trees down for restoring the area.
Through you, Acting Chair. Yes, there is a plan. As the Acting Chair said, it will be the area will be restored by the fall of this year.
And so the staff has a plan in place now to restore the area. And is the developer required to pay for that restoration? I know he was required to pay to put the pipes in.
Yes, he is.
So in my view, we would be wading into the weeds of staff's work. They've already planned a restoration, and they've already planned to have the developer fund it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion?
Well, just a question, sorry, through to you, Acting Mayor Savage. How do you, in your mind, how would you see proposing this play out? I mean, I do agree with Councillor Proctor, and I think that is wading into the weeds. It sounds like there is a plan in place. I guess where I disagree is volunteers, as far as, although I appreciate the sentiment, I think that relying on volunteers sometimes can be tough. And then again, people have different ideas with respect to how things are being done. I guess I'm curious how you see this playing out in your mind, because it's your emotion.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't believe there's a design that's been done with staff. It's just the plan to restore it. And yes, the developer is going to be asked to fund it, but those funds could go towards involving the community. So how I see it playing out is when we were down in Victoria, there was a placemaking tour as part of our AVICC, the Island and Coast Convention. And it just shows that it's very common elsewhere to have this placemaking process, which is a planning process whereby you involve residents, you get them invested in the project, so there's pride in the project, and you can often end up with things a little more unique, a little more artistic than what's normally done. So the idea is to get some involvement. There's a lot of walkers that go there. There's the family of the person that the memorial is for, and to get some ideas from them to see what they may like, incorporate those ideas, and it just, again, gives this idea of placemaking. When the community is involved, it's much more satisfactory, and then you get things like timber from this tree being used, so it just makes it more unique. The restoration might be nothing more than a wide, straight gravel path with some, who knows what sort of planting. So on the one hand, we don't know, it hasn't been designed. It's just the two differences are this. One is we're getting the community involved, and number two, the likelihood of a more unique artistic design is if it's done involving the community, and that can involve the funding. It's certainly in place and it won't cost much at all. So thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Wilson?
It does. I guess where it gets kind of messy in my mind is just who coordinates this, how is this done, and also as a question through to staff. I mean, I'm assuming that a landscape architect or somebody, a landscape designer, is being consulted in currently as to how this road end is going to look. I do trust professional opinions, people that work here that have done many sort of things similar to this, and they pull off from their experience. I guess through to staff, is the developer, I'm assuming or hoping that they would have engaged somebody that specializes in the completion of the road end?
Acting Worship, through you to council and to Councillor Wilson. Sorry about that. I was talking to Fred Spears, Director Spears, this morning about this. His position is that it will be completed by the developer by this fall. The developer will be putting it back into shape and will be manicuring it to some extent. Whether they're using, I don't know whether they're using a architect or not, landscape architect or not at this point. But his position is that the road end will be restored and will be put back in its proper condition, and it will be usable by the public again this fall.
Thank you.
All right, any more discussion?
Yes, I have some comments to make.
Go ahead.
I went down to Duncan to a placemaking workshop. It was very well done before COVID. They're looking at reclaiming some of their downtown areas that have been overtaken with drug use and homelessness issues. And what I gleaned from that process is placemaking is very valuable, but it's also very expensive. If a large municipality like Victoria or a municipality like Duncan that has all of the industrial areas that pay industrial and commercial taxes can afford to pay for consultants to manage that. And I'm having a hard time seeing our staff managing a placemaking workshop for a beach road end. So through you to staff, I'm wondering how much staff time you have dedicated for consulting on projects like this, CAO Campbell.
Through you, Acting Mayor, none.
Thank you.
Not sure if that answers your question, but no, we haven't contemplated. Sorry, I'm not sure, but we haven't, as a staff, we haven't contemplated that. And council, as a recommendation, council may want to wait till that site is restored by the developer at the developer's cost, and then make this decision then.
That's an interesting idea. Wait and see what they have done. Thank you.
Just as a question, sorry.
Yeah, just a sec, Councillor Wilson. We had Councillor Gesselback just before you with his hand up. So go ahead, Councillor Gesselback.
Thank you. One aspect of this motion that does intrigue me is the volunteerism and getting people involved. We've seen the Broom Busters, energetic group, traveling up island, especially into Parksville recently. You see a lot of work, a lot of broom that's been cut. And that's the sort of stuff that I really like. And how do you get the public, those who are willing, to find a project that doesn't take a lot of supervision, but can be done? I note that, I believe it was last year now, the cleanup of Costin Hall. That was a marvelous day. I know former Councillor Colclough spent a lot of time organizing it on his own, got the requisite insurance and approvals from the district, and the people who showed up worked very hard. And Costin Hall was the beneficiary. It's still, the work there still isn't done, and that would be another great project. So I think that's something the next council could seriously consider, whether a subcommittee or a strategic priority is how to identify projects that can be done by volunteers and do it. I know two of my sons in the south end of town have community food forests down around 5th Street. They get groups of over 30 people, 40 people together. They've planted out hundreds of fruit trees on the boulevards. They have volunteers who live on those streets who will go out and water the trees. They've planted out Bayview School with over 40 to 50 fruit trees and other trees. And it really brings the neighborhood together. And after planting, they get together. They sometimes dance. They generally have a good time. And
I think you just froze there, Councillor Gesselback. Your face is... Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I just was like, I can't hear. My screen is frozen. Can anyone
You were
hear me?
frozen for a minute, but everybody's moving now.
Okay, good. Okay.
I'll wrap up. I like the idea of volunteerism, and I think it's something the next council ought to look.
Sorry, we're not hearing you, Councillor Gesselback. You're silent when you're talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Wonder why that is. Okay, there must be a message there. I'm through.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson.
I just asking you, Councillor Savage, it sounds like staff doesn't have time to do this, and it sounds like the developer is going to kind of put things back together. What I gleaned from CAO Campbell was that it's not really going to have any sort of design per se, but that something can be done after. I mean, is this something, Councillor Savage, that you have the time to do? I mean, it's your initiated motion.
Yes, it's just right along the lines of the bus shelter, which cost the community $3,025. Very, very cheap for what you got. And so what you end up with, and I've got a list of all the volunteers posted in the bus shelter. There's at least 40 of them. and people that contributed, donated, and so on. It's very popular, and what you'll find is when you do it this way, it's very unique and somewhat artistic compared to just an institutional bus shelter. So it will be along the lines of that. We have so many talented people. I just thought this was such an easy one. It's basically just restoring nature. It doesn't have much more to it than planting and designing where the plants go, where do you want the trees, what type of trees, and as I say, incorporating that timber for maybe some fencing at the end in the sense of post and beams, so you have a place to put your coffee, that sort of thing. So it could be very, very interesting, that's all, as opposed to, you know, just typical is the idea. And the idea is to use the developer funds if he's paying for it, and we would take it from there. And there was very little it was far more complicated, the bus shelter, and Director Spears was great to work with, but it wasn't a great deal of time for him. This would be far, far less time because it's you shop once, you've got it, and you know there'll be donations of plants and so on. So I just see it as if you ever want a volunteer project, this is about as easy as it gets. There's nothing that's structural. It's just planting, basically. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, it fails on a tie vote with Councillor Proctor and Gesselbrack opposed. Okay, on to the last item. We've got Councillor Proctor's recommendation. Oh, I'm sorry, we're on to number 11 now. Nil number 12, new business reports and correspondence. Mayor and councillors' verbal updates, and Councillor Gesselbrack, you supplied a report, so why don't you go ahead first, please?
Thank you. I've just supplied some charts from the RDN discussions that we've had on where your taxes go. And I think it's instructive to look at these charts to see where your Lantzville dollars that you pay to the RDN, how they're allocated amongst all the various categories. So I won't belabor it. The charts are there. They're instructive. Thank you.
Okay, and a quick question. So, Councillor Gesselbrack, we can blame you for the big RDN tax increases this year, yes?
I bear my shoulders.
All right, thank you for that. And next, Councillor Proctor, if you have anything.
I don't have a report, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Nothing to report, thanks.
Okay, and nothing from myself. So we'll move on to the next item, which is Councillor Proctor's recommendation. If you would like to make your motion, Councillor Proctor, starting from therefore be it resolved.
Therefore, be it resolved that the District of Lantzville undertake a major review of development cost charges, bylaw number 154, 2018, DCC bylaw, to be completed by Coors and Associates Engineering Limited in early 2023, and that the DCC bylaw review project be referred to the fall financial plan process.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gesselbrack, seconder. Okay, discussion. Councillor Proctor.
Well, I think that my whereas statements speak for themselves. We're all aware of how much construction costs have gone up in the last few years. The builder told me a few months ago that they can't get plumbing contractors to give estimates because the cost of materials rises so much that they won't guarantee what materials will be even a month away when they start a job. So currently our DCC charges are out of date, and Coors recommended that it undertakes a substantial review every 4 to 5 years, and we're coming up on 5 years. So I think that it's time for the DCC bylaw to undergo a review so that our DCC charges are appropriate. I know the RDN just recently raised theirs, or the city of Nanaimo, I'm sorry, I've forgotten which one. And I'm sure most municipalities will be, given the rapid escalation of construction costs.
Okay, further discussion? Councillor Gesbrandt?
Yeah, I can echo what Councillor Proctor said. We've had this discussion at the council table, specifically around the 3,000. Around the DCCs. The Urbanics report made reference to this. Here's an opportune moment for the next council to have this reviewed, bring it up to date. Right now, we're in a period of very high inflation. How long that lasts, no one knows. But we may be into a different universe in another year in terms of the costs that our municipality incurs to provide the services, specifically water, sewer, roads. So I think it's a good idea and I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, for me, there's a few factors. The way I usually do things, I do them in sequence. But first thing is with this motion, I don't think it necessarily has to be Coors. That would be up to staff to figure out the process as to who to hire and if there is a request or if they just pick someone. I don't know their process for this, if requests for proposals or how they do it. So I wouldn't state that it has to be Coors. Next, the first step I would do is we need to ensure that our DCCs, as a result of this, don't go down. Originally, they were based on a certain build-out, and that build-out was based on our new OCP. Yes, it hadn't been passed yet, but they still based it on the draft at the time, which was fairly similar to the final one. So if our build-out changes, this we don't know, but I certainly would like to know to make sure that our DCCs don't go down. If it's, a lot more units in our build-out now, then we don't know the effect that will have. So I'd like to find that out, and we need the build-out. The original build-out was based on the OCP, but now we've had a couple of major developments. One's already passed, which are more than what the OCP numbers were. So the build-out numbers will change. They have changed since the last OCP. And yes, I agree with the inflation. Urbanics mentioned that. The shortfall, it was around a little over 2.1 million, I believe it was, their projected shortfall over the actual costs. And then the last point I'll make, so that's the process. So I'd rather see this go to the next council and they can, be responsible for the projected build out. They can make sure that analysis is done, that once they've done the build out, that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot and maybe the DCCs might go down. And we'll measure inflation at that time, check what the building costs are and so on. They may have gone up since then, so we don't want to start the investigation prematurely. And then the other factor here is by the very fact of doing this, in the Coors report, they base every single DCC on actual projected costs. And their statement right at the start of their DCC report is that if you cannot justify the cost, if they're not actually real costs, then you cannot charge the DCCs. So it underlines so clearly what I keep saying, that DCCs are simply to cover cost. It's a break-even proposition. There's no profit, no windfall, nothing. So I won't be supporting this, but I do like the idea, because we discussed this, or Bannock's mentioned it, it's only prudent and it's forward-looking. It's a good thing to be doing this. I just think the right time for me is to do it very soon after the election with the new council, for those reasons that I gave. It'll be up to them to state the build-out, and that's the critical part of the Coors report. Whoever's doing it, they have to know what that anticipated build-out is. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
My hand is up. I have some more to say.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Proctor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just a few things. If we refer this project to the fall financial plan process, this council won't be involved in that. That financial plan process will start after the next council is sitting. As per what happened to us when we were first elected, we reviewed the financial plan. That's my first point. My second point is that I did do all my homework when I made this motion, and staff would prefer that Coors writes the next report, because they did all of the undertakings for the first report and will be able to use the figures that they used to create the first one and build on it to create the second one. Thirdly, any change in DCCs that we make now does not change what Village South will pay for DCCs or any other proposal that's in front of us. It's my understanding that it's against the law to accept proposals from people and then change the DCC bylaws after their proposal has been started. So this would affect projects quite a bit down the road from what we're looking at now. And I don't believe that the build out of Village South will affect further projects after that. So I do think that this is the time to get this on the table, to make sure that it's looked at while inflation has affected the price of all of these charges. There's no way that DCCs are going to go down, or that they have gone down anywhere in North America in the last 3 or 4 years, or that they will go down anywhere in North America. So it's time to highlight this for whoever's looking at the financial plan in the fall.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I'll respond. With DCCs, there's certain bylaws where there's a 1-year grace period after a development's been completely approved, has finished the approval process. So whatever of these certain bylaws are in place, those bylaws have to be honored for a 1-year period, but I'm going to check with Director Limshu. Could you comment on that, please, Director Limshu?
You're correct. There are certain, if certain applications are considered in stream at the time of adoption of the DCC bylaw, they're subject to whatever was in place at the time that they made the application. Specific to the Village South, at this point in time, the application is really about amending the land use bylaws, both the OCP and the zoning. Typically, that 1-year grace period would apply to things like subdivision, as an example. Certainly from staff's perspective, we'll certainly confirm that and send a note to council with the correct information.
Okay, thank you. And could you speak to, please, Director Limshu, Some of those factors, one being build out. The build out, I believe, has to be cemented and somewhat firmly in place so that they're creating their DCCs on the build out. And then the major upcoming projects that staff thinks they will need as a part of this development, does that not also have to be in place? If you could speak to those two things, please.
Yeah, generally speaking, there's a couple major factors that are considered when you're creating a DCC bylaw. Obviously, the build out, the anticipated build out is one of them, and the tool for looking at that is your OCP. So depending on how current your OCP is, certainly the consultants will be referring to that document first and foremost to see, well, what is the anticipated build out for the community? Where is it occurring? And then working with staff on determining what infrastructure upgrades are required to facilitate that build out. And then the numbers that are generated through that exercise will help ultimately determine, what those DCC rates are for the various services. So roads, water, sewer, drainage, parks, etc.
So with these developments upcoming, Councillor Proctor made a good point when she brought up Village South. So if we feel that, that we're missing out on having DCCs a little low, it's obviously in our interest to start this ahead of the game, because if we have this 1-year grace period, the sooner we get the DCCs in place, if they do go up, then we can take advantage of that. So in terms of process and timing, do you see an advantage to starting, say, this summer or early fall versus October, or what's your general?
Point of order, there's 6 minutes remaining in the meeting.
Yes, I've just finishing off with Director Limshu, and this is the last item, I believe. So I believe we'll wrap up before the 9:30 time. So I'll certainly commit to, I won't be speaking for more than another minute. So we can just call the question well before 9:30. So go ahead if you want to finish off, Director Limshu.
Yeah, I think as a general comment, the sooner you start on that exercise, the sooner we can have a bylaw in place that reflects the current costs associated with, the development. So that's just kind of a general comment. I mean, ultimately, it'll be determined by council as to whether or not, where this DCC review exercise ranks in terms of all the other priorities that council has.
So realistically, would you see initiating it this summer, this fall, if we pass this motion, or would it likely be more in the mid-fall, mid-October, November range anyway?
Your Worship, if this motion is passed, it would be initiated immediately. And council needs to understand that municipalities cannot be retroactive in any costs. So it's only when it's adopted.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So
And for clarity, it does say that it's being referred to the fall financial plan process.
all right, thank you. So if any more discussion, or I'll call the question. Okay, we'll call the question on this. All those in favor? Okay, and opposed? Acting Mayor Savage opposed. So the motion carries with Acting Mayor Savage opposed. So we're on to introduction of late items. Any late items? Seeing none, we're on to any notice of motion. Seeing none. Public clarification period. Any speakers? Seeing none, I call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Recording stopped.